Welcome, everybody, to the Hoboken Municipal Complex public meeting. Jennifer Gonzalez, I'm the Director of Environmental Services for the City of Hoboken. It's my pleasure to welcome you here today. I'll start with a brief overview of our agenda and some housekeeping notes. Our agenda this evening will begin with opening remarks from Mayor Bala and introductions of the project team that's with us here tonight. We'll then review how we arrived at this moment with a proposed project at 1501 Adams Street, the opportunity that this project presents, and the needs that it will meet for city operations and our community. We'll turn it over to John Nastasi, who's with us from Nastasi Architects, to review the proposed project where it stands today, and then we'll break out into small group discussion. Some housekeeping notes before we really get started. We kindly ask that all participants remain muted with your video off during the presentation. Later in the meeting, when we break out into small group discussion and breakout rooms, we'll encourage you to turn on your video and certainly discuss at will. We will have 4 breakout rooms tonight, including the main room. The topics in each breakout room will be the same. They will all be a facilitated discussion, and participants will be assigned to breakout rooms at random. When the time comes, you'll be automatically directed into a breakout room. Please save all questions and discussion for the breakout room. Any comments and questions posted in the chat will be addressed later in the meeting during the breakout sessions. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Bala, who will provide some opening remarks.
Thank you, Director Gonzalez, and thank you everyone for being here, spending time on this Wednesday evening to discuss a historic project to really holistically look at our city, our infrastructure needs, and how we move forward, not just today or next year, but for generations to come. When I think about this project, I actually think about, as a community, how we together went through the last 2 years with the pandemic. I think about the leadership shown by our public safety through the applaud sessions, the 7 o'clock sessions when we show our appreciation to our frontline workers for their service in keeping us safe and protected as a community. And when I think about the future, I kind of view our opportunities from that lens as to what we can do, really to demonstrate as a community how important public safety is and our well-being is as a community, and also how much we appreciate the sacrifice and service of those individuals who step up to serve and protect our public. So in that regard, I view this as a very historical project, and I also view it as an opportunity for us to come together and really create something visionary that even goes beyond those basic elements, even go into the needs of the public library, a possible uptown branch. We all know, I know personally that our recreation program is bursting at the seams and in need of facilities. So I hope this provides an opportunity for a healthy discussion to review a proposal that would touch a number of points where we can together create a more stronger and resilient community, and also listen to your feedback. We would like to know, what appeals to residents, what might be missing, what could be added, and we want the process to be driven by the residents of Hoboken and ultimately be a reflection of the desires of the community. So I'm very grateful to have such a talented staff and group of professionals leading this charge. And with that, I will pass it to, I believe, Director Freeman for introductions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So right before we begin the presentation, I just want to point to all of our city team and John Nastasi's team that's here tonight, and we're all going to be dispersed into breakout sessions later. Just very quickly, Caleb Stratton, the city's Assistant Business Administrator and Chief Resiliency Officer. Director Jen Gonzalez runs the Department of Environmental Services. Director Chris Brown is our Director of Community Development. RJ Theofield is a planner in the Community Development Department. Director Ryan Sharp runs the Transportation and Parking Department. We have Fire Chief Anton Peskins. We have Police Chief Steve Aguiar. We have our brand new Director of Public Safety, first day on the job, Ken Ferranti. We have our OEM Director, Sergeant William Montanez. And then from John Nastasi's team, we have John Nastasi, Carl Mulheisen, Jason Colbert, and David Worster. So that's our full team tonight, and then we're going to dive right in. So we wanted to start off with discussing kind of how we arrived here and kind of where we're going. So this entire process actually starts more than 10 years ago. The Monarch site on Hoboken's northern waterfront in the second ward was owned by a developer named Iron State, who proposed building two 11-story residential towers on that site. This was not well received by the public, and the fight to protect the Monarch site lasted nearly a decade, culminating in a settlement that enjoyed overwhelming support by the residents of Hoboken, especially in that second ward neighborhood, and 8 of the 9 city council members at the time. Per that agreement, the city of Hoboken acquired the Monarch site for the intent of public open space, and that we acquired about 2.5 acres of space, as that you can see in that picture. Additionally, as a part of that settlement, the city acquired 800 Monroe, which is also owned by Iron State, which was proposed to have a 10-story residential tower with nearly 190 units at that site. And we recognize that that area of town already had a fairly dense residential neighborhood in the third ward. And per the Monarch settlement agreement, the city also acquired 800 Monroe for the purposes of creating a park. At this 1.5 acre lot, the city is planning to build its 4th resiliency park to mitigate the impacts from rainfall and flooding in the western part of Hoboken. And then lastly, as part of that settlement, the developer acquired the property at 256 Observer Highway, which was owned by the city and is currently at the site of the city's dilapidated public works garage. And the city agreed as part of that settlement to vacate 256 Observer Highway by November 4th, 2024. We approved and executed this settlement agreement knowing that the city had to find a new location for our public works operations in short order. And that process began during the settlement negotiations with an analysis of our needs assessment and identification of additional and potential sites. Jen?
So at no taxpayer expense, the city contracted HDR, an engineering firm that specializes in public works facilities, to create a needs assessment based on our current operations and our projections for the next 20 years. In July of 2020, HDR identified that approximately 95,000 square feet is required to adequately house and operate our public works department, with approximately 56,000 square feet to be located on the ground floor. The city then conducted an extensive search to evaluate all available properties for the public works facility. Our search focused on the North End rehabilitation area, which is shown here in blue. The reason being, it's undeveloped. It has no residential neighbors, which will allow us to minimize the quality of life concerns from noise or odors associated with our operations while still providing critical services. For that same reason, it's logical to locate public works next to other industrial uses like the North Hudson Sewerage Authority and the PSE&G substation, which are both shown on this figure in gray, as well as the city's salt storage facility, which is located at 17th Street. So we'll have public works near salt storage. A municipal garage is a permitted use in the North End redevelopment plan, and it's a community benefit. So this will enable us to build a resilient critical facility for emergency response. Speaking more about resiliency, our current public works facility floods during intense rainfall events and flooded during Superstorm Sandy. And we shouldn't locate a critical facility in a flood-prone area. We, together with our partners at the NJDEP and the North Hudson Sewerage Authority, have invested more than $300 million in resiliency investments that will protect the city of Hoboken, including this North End area. In the future, the North End shouldn't flood because the rebuild by design resist structure will mitigate coastal flooding. And that's shown in the map in orange. The North Hudson Sewer Authority's H6, H7 sewer shed project will create a new high-level storm sewer system that directs stormwater to the Northwest Resiliency Park from the areas on the map shown in blue. The Northwest Resiliency Park will store up to 1 million gallons of stormwater from the north end during intense rain events, rather than flooding roadways. There will be a direct synergy between Rebuild by Design, the Northwest Resiliency Park, and this new critical facility. The proposed municipal complex will anchor the redevelopment in the north end and will tie together the critical infrastructure investments that we've already made or are in the process of being built. So, determining a site. We conducted a thorough and a methodical site selection process within the north end. We started by considering 1500 Clinton Street. Then we considered 2 properties owned by Academy Bus at 1500 Jefferson and 1500 Adams Streets. And lastly, 1501 Adams Street, which is shown in red. Ultimately, the city concluded that 1501 Adams Street was the ideal property in the north end because it provides enough space to accommodate the public works facility's required footprint, as well as other departmental and community space needs. Its close proximity to other industrial uses and public infrastructure minimizes conflicts with residents and commercial businesses. And the industrial site remains blighted after nearly a decade from after Superstorm Sandy, when there incurred damage to the site. The north end is the right location for a critical facility that will be resilient in the face of climate change. This proposed site shown on the aerial here at 1501 Adams Street is an entire city block, roughly 80,000 square feet. It has 200 feet of frontage along 15th Street and 16th Street and 400 feet of frontage along Adams Street and Grand Street.
After the city methodically narrowed down the sites in the north end of 1501 Adams Street, we considered various mixed-use residential developments that were proposed by Mr. Poggi, the property owner. Mr. Poggi approached the city with a partner, Advance Realty, as the prospective purchaser of the site. Advance first proposed a plan that included 3 17-story residential towers, which was upwards of close to 600 residential units built on top of a 90,000 square foot public works facility and an elevated park sandwiched between 2 residential buildings. Through the residential development and a 30-year pilot, the city would eventually retain ownership of the public works portion of the building as a condominium unit. The city, however, would still be required to pay for the construction of its public works portion of the building for an estimated $22.5 million. This proposal was rejected by the city because it did not adequately accommodate the city's public works needs, as well as the height and size of the entire project. Additionally, there was a second proposal. Advance then proposed a 14-story building that included 254 residential units, no public open space, and a public works facility with a footprint that was deemed insufficient for the public works garage. This proposal was rejected because it required the city to purchase its portion of the land for likely upwards of $10 million and pay for the cost to build out the public works garage. The redeveloper also still required a pilot for that agreement. None of the developer proposals for 1501 Adams would provide an uncompromised public works facility that truly meets the needs of our growing city. In a closed session of the City Council last fall, we determined that the best path forward for the city would be to acquire the property, and we proceeded with preparing an appraisal. Additionally, by acquiring the Monarch site, which would have been 2 11-story towers, and 800 Monroe, which would have been another 10-story building, Hoboken residents and the city decided to really reject additional density and overdevelopment in residential areas. The proposed project that we will discuss later today, or in a few minutes, does just that. It rejects overdevelopment in residential areas. Instead of 3 17-story residential towers, we are proposing an 118-foot high building with indoor recreation and other community uses on top of a public works garage and firehouse with public parking, police headquarters, and other municipal services. Together, the former Monarch site, 800 Monroe, and 1501 Adams Street will prevent overdevelopment in residential areas and improve recreation for residents of all ages. So now let's discuss how the project evolved from just a public works facility into a campus with public safety and community uses. With the possibility of acquiring a full city block in the north end, we currently have a once-in-a-century opportunity to think holistically for the future of our city, to modernize multiple antiquated facilities and infrastructure while avoiding millions of dollars in costs to bring aging buildings into the current century, plan for efficient and effective government operations, and meet the resident demand for community space, which could and should include indoor recreation and senior services. With the support of the City Council on December 15, 2021, the city entered into a contract with Nastasi Architects to begin the schematic and planning process for a possible multifaceted municipal facility at 1501 Adams Street. The Nastasi team immediately started assessing all city facilities and needs, meeting with the leaders of the Hoboken Police, Fire, and Office of Emergency Management, as well as the staff at the current Public Works facility. In addition, the Nastasi team took tours of various city facilities, both in Hoboken and in other communities, to understand the needs and the current deficiencies of Hoboken's facilities. To speak specifically about some of our facilities, I'm going to turn it over to Fire Chief Anton Peskins to discuss specifically fire operations in the city.
Thank you, Jason. I'm here tonight to talk about fire headquarters located at 201 Jefferson Street. Fire headquarters is 107 years old. It was originally built for horse-drawn carriages. We have a historic preservation plan that states the cost to bring the facility into a state of good repair, not to make it functional, just to make good repair, make it habitable, will cost upwards of $2 million. At 8,400 square feet, the building is functionally obsolete. It doesn't meet modern requirements for fire apparatus to have drive-through capabilities. We are unable to maintain our vehicle fleet there. I have 10 large diesel apparatus. We currently perform maintenance on 2nd Street, which is a safety issue for pedestrians as well as my mechanics. It's not ADA compliant. It has inadequate parking. It floods during intense rain events and has structural, roof, heating, ventilation, air conditioning issues, as well as electrical problems. Retrofitting fire headquarters to meet modern standards, it's not feasible because the parcel just does not allow for fire trucks to pass through. It's just too small. That's right. Thank you. Thank you, Chief Aguiar.
Yes. So Hoboken Police Headquarters is beyond its useful life and is also functionally obsolete. At approximately 17,800 square feet, we're also incredibly space constrained. Our arrestee processing area is insufficient with no separate arrest entrance, which is also known as a sally port. Our office and storage space does not meet current demand, and our main lobby is insufficient for public access to services. Just like the Public Works facility, we have no shared dispatch center or an emergency operations center. This is a shared need for police, fire, EMS, and Public Works. We are so space constrained that we had to turn our only meeting and training room into a female locker room. As we continue to expand gender diversity in the police force, we need equal space for female officers. We have no employee amenities, not enough lockers, no break room, and the building also has its fair share of HVAC and plumbing issues. Retrofitting police headquarters to meet modern standards is not feasible because the building is not large enough for our current and our future needs. Director Gonzalez.
As we've discussed, we need to relocate our Public Works facility by November of 2024. Our current Public Works facility is 43 years old. At 40,400 square feet, we're also space constrained. We don't have enough parking for our current fleet, and we constantly need to move vehicles unnecessarily in order to access other vehicles. We don't have enough storage space. We currently use the vacant Cove site, which is soon to be Cove Park, and Block 10, which is soon to be the Southwest Park expansion, both of which will become parks and no longer be able to be used for storage. We have no employee amenities, not enough male lockers, no female lockers, no break room, no employee parking, which is an issue for our employees who have to report to work during snow emergencies. It doesn't meet modern requirements for Public Works, and the electrical panel is so old that we actually can't retrofit it to electrify our fleet. We would need a brand new electrical service. We have no emergency operations center, or no automated backup generator, and our Public Recycling Center actually has residents walking through active Public Works operations. It floods during intense rainstorms, and it too has its share of structural, roof, heating, ventilation, and electrical issues. Regarding City Hall is a historic building, 141 years old, built in 1881. We have a historic preservation plan for the building that states the cost to bring the facility into a state of good repair is nearly $20 million. We recently used $500,000 in grant funds to complete immediate repairs to the portico to address structural and electrical hazards. And now we're applying to the New Jersey Historic Trust for funding to offset a $1.5 million rehabilitation project for the portico. We experienced flooding on the ground floor with water intrusion through the walls, and some areas have flooring over no subfloor at all. Addressing these issues are estimated at $1.4 million. Areas of the building frequently smell of sewage, and that's even after a partial replacement of the main sewer line last year, which cost more than $75,000. The building is very space constrained, which is why we recently moved the housing division, and we are about to move the health department to the multi-service center. As most know, council members don't have offices at City Hall. We only have 2 large meeting rooms, council chambers, and 1 conference room that is shared by nearly a dozen boards and commissions. The ground floor conference room at City Hall also serves as our emergency operations center, yet it doesn't have a generator. The City Council just approved a contract for more than $280,000 to install a generator for City Hall, which would power our emergency operations center, but might not be necessary if we have a state-of-the-art emergency operations center at 1501 Adams Street. To be clear, we are not proposing to vacate City Hall, but rather we are looking to relocate certain departments and certain offices that will have functional efficiency with the public safety and public works services offered at 1501 Adams Street, say like the municipal court, for example. Doing so would enable us to use the space at City Hall better and avoid certain investments. So altogether, the chiefs highlighted how many of our antiquated facilities share common needs in redevelopment, such as an emergency operations center, consolidated dispatch, parking, fleet maintenance, meeting rooms, locker rooms, employee areas, the list goes on. Further, public works and public safety work in lockstep during an emergency. It simply makes sense to co-locate our operations in the same building for response times and efficiency. Retrofitting fire headquarters, as Chief Peskin said, to meet modern standards is not feasible. And retrofitting any of these buildings in their current footprint would still not provide enough space for future operations in our growing city. Developing one new municipal complex with public safety and public works will be more cost effective than redeveloping 3 buildings, fire headquarters, police headquarters, and a new public works facility. But very importantly, regarding cost, the North End redevelopment plan identifies a municipal garage as a permitted use and community benefit, meaning that we can and will lean on private developers to pay for the vast majority of funding for this project. In addition, we will seek all available grant funds with the goal of minimizing any expense to the taxpayers. Beyond the needs of our obsolete facilities, we've heard from you, our residents, many times in the last few years about the need for community space in the North End. Previous community planning processes in and around the North End identified a strong demand for indoor recreation and other community amenities. We are also very aware of the need for more recreation space for all ages in Hoboken. The North Lot feasibility study, of which the graphic you see on the screen here, was completed in 2017, recommended parking and public safety in Northwest Hoboken, both of which are included in this proposed project. It also identified significant demand for indoor recreation of all ages, as well as interest in a community center, an uptown branch of the Hoboken Public Library, urban farming, innovation space, and other community uses. Then there's the North End redevelopment plan that was created in March 2021. The North End redevelopment plan recommended similar community uses or benefits as the North Lot study. You can see the overlap highlighted in red here. This includes an uptown branch of the Hoboken Public Library, indoor recreation, and a community center, among other uses. So considering this once in a generation opportunity to acquire a full city block in the North End, the needs of our city facilities to meet our growing population and our expanding park acreage, and the demand for community space in the North End that we have heard from you since 2017, we developed a framework for this proposed project that John will share with you momentarily. We've been working diligently with Nastasi Architects since December on this process. We have the envelope, kind of the general form of the building right now, and we need your feedback to fill it in. After John reviews the current design development process and space for the community amenities, we look forward to breaking out into small groups to discuss which community uses you will recommend in the project. After tonight's meeting, we will also launch an online survey to collect more feedback. And then we'll return to you in April with some proposed concept designs. With that, I would like to turn it over to John Nastasi to review the design as it stands today.
Thank you, Jennifer. So I'm going to go through a series of slides that show space allocation for different departments. And what we're looking at is my model in my office of the proposed site at 1501 Adams. And the first step in developing this site was to place the core program of the project, which is the Public Works facility. The Public Works facility takes up about 2/3 of the site. And including the mezzanine in the upper level, it's about 118,000 square feet. This Public Works facility will allow growth from the existing facility, which is inadequate, and it also allows for the city to slowly increase its population over the next 5 decades. The one thing you notice about where I placed the program is I pressed it up against 16th Street, and it's important to know that with this site, the 16th Street side, or the north side, presses up against the North Hudson Sewer Authority. It's what I call sort of the service side of the site. And the southern part of the property, which is 15th Street, I would consider the more public aspect of the site. So once we located the Department of Public Works, and it's important to note that these guys in Public Works need about 32 feet in height to operate their ground floor with all of their trucks and equipment. Once we place this department here, the natural segue from here was to put the fire department headquarters, new fire department headquarters on the northern side, on the southern side, which allows drive-through bays. This will allow our fire headquarters to get certified, bonded, and produce a state-of-the-art fire department headquarters. The residence for the firemen will be up on the second floor here, and this pretty much sets up the base of the building. The next critical department is new police headquarters. And here we're proposing a police headquarters with a public face on 15th Street, and the majority of its departments inside an administrative building. And what's also important here is that we could house the entire police department fleet in a parking structure above Public Works. So the police department don't have to scatter their vehicles in different locations. They could be protected in an environment that's not exposed to the public, and they could also have a state-of-the-art public-facing police facility. The Office of Emergency Management, shown here in orange, sits intentionally juxtaposed to the fire department. And in this cluster of programs, you start to see the value of a project like this. You have shared dispatch centers and emergency response centers where OEM, the police, and the fire department are working together with the DPW. So we have a real response headquarters now. And whenever you cluster these departments together, there's a tremendous efficiency with shared services like meeting rooms, teaching rooms, amenity space for these folks. And I could see each of these departments being able to host educational events because they have an uncompromised facility. As we move up into the building, we start to think more community-based and public uses. So we have at about 12,000 square feet of open public space as a raised plinth above the fire department. And we have the first of our community spaces. This is a 5,000 square foot community center, which the city is in dire need of, and it's accessed from the public lobby on 15th Street. So now we finally could have a space for multi-uses that spill out onto a 12,000 square foot open space. So you can imagine the type of community events, multi-function events we could have with 5,000 feet of interior community space and 12,000 square feet of outside community space. Moving up from there, we have the municipal offices for the city of Hoboken. We could pretty much house 37,000 square feet of municipal offices. This will take disparate departments that are scattered all over Hoboken and are overcrowded in City Hall, and we could put them in a new, efficient, state-of-the-art office building with public facilities for courtroom and council chambers. And the one thing you should notice right away is that the courtroom is connected to the police department and the council chambers are connected to the city offices. So we would finally be able to offer our councilmen, council folks, their own offices that are directly connected to council chambers. So we're solving all of the inadequacies of our current facilities. To support all of these uses and pressed up against the north side of the property is a public parking facility for over 400 spaces. These 400 spaces will more than adequately support these uses, plus provide surplus parking for the potential future developments that will go on in the north end, all centered in one facility with one efficiently built structure. So you can see here the base of the building, which is roughly about 90 feet high at this point, houses Public Works, Fire Department, Police Department, Office of Emergency Management, city administrative offices, including courtroom, council chambers. And as we step up from here, we get into the more community-based, even more public and even more community-based. And it starts with, I think, the most critical piece of the community-based program, which is the sort of the North End Library branch, where we can have, again, a 5,000 square foot library facility, which would be built from scratch, would allow for growth, and would house our collections and be able to kind of take care of all the folks living on the north edge of town. And the remainder of the facility is why we're actually here tonight to open up the community discussions about what we think is the most critical use of the building. We have two parcels of space. We have an 18,000 square foot, what I would call a field house, and we have a 42,000 square foot volume, which could be a recreation center. And it's important to note that once we put these two blocks into the model, we're now just arriving at the allowable zoning in this North End redevelopment plan. So none of this goes over the allowable zoning, and all of this is built in to the master plan for the North End. So in these two parcels, which I think we want to discuss in breakout rooms, is what's the best use for this field house? What's the best use for this recreation center? And keep in mind, both of these social uses are supported by brand new elevator cores and a 400 car parking facility. And just to get the breakout room started, I started to plug in some things to show everybody scale and proportion. You could see in the recreation facility at 42,000 square feet, that's essentially a 6 basketball court facility with bleachers. So this is kind of like what New York City built over their sewer treatment plant, which is called Riverbank State Park. I know my sons grew up playing in tournaments in Riverbank, and I could see here with the garage and a 6-court facility, we could host academic and A+U basketball tournaments, which I'm sure there's plenty of people in town who would be very excited about that. The other things for scale is you could see the size of a volleyball court inside this 18,000 square foot parcel, or the scale of pickleball to volleyball to basketball courts. And then also pitching and batting cages, locker rooms, snack bars. So you could imagine if we put our heads together, we can really program this upper part of the building and really cap this complex off with things that reach out to the community and solve all of our programmatic issues. The last thing I would also bring everybody's attention to is because they're big, voluminous spaces, we could have running tracks. They're very tall recreation spaces. We can do a lot in the top of this building, and the building could also be capped off with community garden parcels. And you could see in scale, this is about 150 community garden plots. And that I understand from talking with Jen and the administration, there's currently a waiting list of over 1,000 local community members who are looking for a community garden plot. Over 1,000 people in a 50,000 person community, which I think is really impressive that so much of the community is interested in community gardening. When you're done stacking all these boxes, it may sound to everybody like Lego blocks, or how do you get all these things to work together? But they actually work, and they could work really well together. This building can get enveloped in a very simple envelope that lets, because of the types of spaces, we can let light enter into the recreation spaces, light into the office building. The entire parking garage could be open air and it could be breathable. And then the council chambers and courtroom could be enclosed and supported, but light can come in from a variety of places. And I think the final result, can be a piece of architecture that I think the city could be very proud of, the community could be proud of, and we could be looked at nationally as, in the context of all of our resiliency work, as building a state-of-the-art municipal complex in the 21st century, post-Sandy, that really addresses the needs of Hoboken.
John, thank you very much. And John, if you want to describe the last two renderings you're going to show.
Well, we have another preliminary, we have a preliminary view from street level. And again, this is super preliminary. And you could just see the scale and proportion of the state-of-the-art fire facility, the lobby, the Office of Emergency Management, Fire Department, council chambers and courthouse, administration building, and then recreation facilities up above, with the parking structure, open air, and then the DPW garage forming the anchor on the north end of this project.
Thanks, John. And then just to recap on the next slide, here's a full breakdown of the project itself with another picture. I'm not going to go through every square footage, but I'll kind of keep this up for a second so everyone can get an idea of space-wise what we're looking at and the size of parking. So there's your second to review. And as we move on, just before we get into the breakout groups, the city transparently is on a tight schedule. To construct the public works facility component of this project, we need to keep an expedited timeline, including making the property owner a fair market-based offer and acquiring the property by this spring. Then we would plan to complete design and break ground by the end of 2022, with the goal of completing the public works facility by 2024 and continuing the other construction as needed to finish hopefully by 2025. So that's the end of our portion of this presentation. I thank you. We thank you for your patience on this. I know it was a lot of information. It's dense. I'm sure there are a lot of questions, and we're going to break out all of these breakout groups. We've separated them out. Obviously, you're all public is random, but in each group, we're going to have members from the city administration, members of the public safety department, and someone from John's architecture team. So you can ask really any questions you want related to the project, the concept, things like that. As a reminder, we encourage you to turn your video on in the breakout rooms. We want this to try to be as community focused as possible. We'll have 4 breakout rooms, including this main room. The topics in each breakout room will be the same, and the participants have been assigned to each breakout room at random. We're gonna go for about 25 minutes or so, and we'll get warnings when we'll kind of come back and then go over next steps. So You're gonna, a little pop-up.
Down there on the bottom left.
All right, your pop-up's gonna come up on your screen to join the breakout group. And everyone have a enjoy the conversation. Thank you. But I'm glad everyone's back. It's nice to see everyone's face now. I hope you enjoyed those breakout discussions. After tonight's meeting, the city is going to launch an online survey that will include a lot of the components that were referenced tonight. In addition to, we're going to take into consideration the things and the items that were put on each of those boards that we went through today. The link of the survey is on the screen. Director Gonzalez is adding it to the chat box, and we will be launching a city website, a project website, excuse me, tomorrow, where you can find this presentation, the recording, the survey link, and get updates as we go along. So the website for that is hobokenNJ.gov/Hoboken Municipal Complex. If you have any questions, we've created an email address specific to this project as well, municipalcomplex@HobokenNJ.gov. Updates on this will come via social media, Nixle. I'm sure there'll be other venues where this is talked about. I hope everyone has a very safe, happy night. Thank you again for joining us, and we will all talk to you soon. Take care.
Thank you.